Commander Nix's communication device shrieked with Priority 1 override. Codes at exactly the wrong moment. The fleet positioning briefing dissolved into chaos as every senior officer's screen lit up simultaneously. Biological crisis, contractor section. Immediate response required. Sir, the Cubs won't let go of the human. The security chief's voice carried an edge Nixva had never heard in 15 years. Of service, we've tried everything. They're treating her like their Pack Alpha, the security feed filled the command center's main display, and Nixva felt his secondary heart skip their rhythm. 12 juvenile Carnati apex predators whose species bonded exactly once in their entire lives, usually to their birth parents, had formed a protective circle around a human female in maintenance coveralls. Their crystalline claws were extended, their neck ridges fully flared in defensive posture, not toward threats, toward their own parents. That's Lily, Commander Jax's voice cut through the stunned silence. Maintenance contractor, she scheduled for the Cost 9 reconnaissance run-in. She checked her chronometer and her face went ashen gray. In 2 hours and 43 minutes, Nixva's claws scraped against his command console. The Cost 9 mission was solo insertion deep behind enemy lines with a 72% projected mortality rate. They'd chosen Lily specifically because humans possess the bizarre ability to survive in conditions that killed every other known species. But now, sir, the Cubs haven't eaten in 6 hours. The medical officer's report scrolled across the tactical display. They refused to respond to parental commands. Standard separation protocols have failed. They're exhibiting bonding hormone levels that shouldn't be physiologically possible outside of birth-parent attachment. Show me the timeline. Nixva pulled up the facility logs, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. When did this start? 11 hours ago. Lily took her lunch break in Recreation Zone Gamma. The Cubs were there with their guardian supervisors. According to witnesses, she just sat down with them, sat down. Nixva's voice climbed an octave. That's it, she shared her food, listened to them talk about their day, then went back to work. Security chief's confusion matched everyone else's. The Cubs followed her. They've been with her ever since. They sleep when she sleeps. They eat only if she eats, and when we tried to physically separate them 20 minutes ago, the screen switched to recorded footage. 6 fully trained Karanathi warriors. The Cubs' actual parents approached their offspring with calm, authoritative command. The Cubs' response was immediate and horrifying. Coordinated defensive formation, threat displays directed at their own blood relatives, and vocalizations that translated roughly to back away from our alpha, or we will engage. By the void, Jexa whispered. They chose her over their parents. That's not just impossible. That's a violation of every biological imperative we understand. Nixva pulled up Lily's file. Human female employed as maintenance technician for 18 months. Performance reviews, exceptional security clearance, elevated due to mission selection, special skills, improvised repairs, stress tolerance, and he had to read it twice. Unusually good with station fauna. Get me a behavioral specialist, get me a xenobiologist, and get me high command. Nixva watched the feed as Lily apparently tried to explain something to the Cubs, gesturing toward the door. The Cubs pressed closer to her, their eyes tracking every movement with absolute Focus. We have an enemy fleet in system. A reconnaissance window that closes in. Under 3 hours, and a bond at our best. Science says shouldn't exist, sir. There's more, the medical officer's voice was barely steady. Force. Separation at this bonding stage could trigger fatal shock in the cubs. Their neurochemistry has restructured around her presence. If we sedate her and remove her, will kill them. Clears throat. The command center fell silent except for the hum of tactical displays showing enemy fleet movements, mission countdowns, and one small human surrounded by 12 deadly predators who had decided she was worth dying for. Commander Nixva had commanded fleets through 3 wars and survived situations that had killed better officers. He'd never faced anything like this. Convene an emergency council. Every department head, every specialist. He couldn't tear his eyes from the screen where Lily was now apparently braiding something with fiber optic cable while the cubs watched in rapt attention. We have 2 hours to solve a biological impossibility, or we lose either our best reconnaissance operative or 12 cubs from our finest military bloodlines, or both, Jexna added quietly, or both. Nixva agreed and began issuing orders into a situation that had no precedent, no protocol, and no time. Dr. Vilnix arrived within minutes, her credentials spanning 3 decades of Karnathi behavioral studies. She lasted exactly 90 seconds in the observation room before her confidence shattered. Impossible. She stared at her handheld scanner, shaking her head in denial. The pheromone markers, they're treating her as primary pack authority, but that requires years of dominance, establishment, ritual combat, hierarchical positioning. Dr. Nixva's patience was measured in seconds. Now we don't have years. We have 2 hours and 16 minutes. Make them understand she has to leave. Vilnex entered the room with textbook precision, using the 17 approved gestures for alpha recognition and submission request. The cubs didn't even glance at her. Their eyes remained locked on Lily, who was explaining something about voltage regulators too. The 3 smallest ones, young ones. Your behavioral specialist is here to help facilitate. The cubs' simultaneous growl vibrated through the floor. Plating. Defensive formation. Instantaneous and perfect. Lily was in the center before Vilnex could finish her sentence. Okay guys, she's nice. She's just trying to. Lily's soothing voice did nothing. The cubs' neck ridges flared wider, their claws extending another centimeter. Seriously, you can't threaten every person who walks in here. They're protecting you. Vilnex breathed, backing toward the door. Not from danger, from interruption. That's alpha guarding behavior. They think you need defending from social disruption. The emergency council assembled in waves, each expert more baffled than the last. The cubs' parents, Lieutenant Gralnix and Commander Kikna, both decorated special forces veterans, stood before the observation window with expressions of complete incomprehension. Request permission to command our offspring, sir. Gronix's military bearing couldn't hide his desperation. Granted, but Dr. Vilnek recommends. Understood, sir. Gronix entered the room, his massive frame radiating parental authority. Offspring. Acknowledge. The cubs' heads turned for one hopeful moment. Nixva thought biology would override whatever bizarre bond had formed. Then the cubs positioned themselves between Lily and Their father, teeth bared, neck ridges. At full threat display, the largest one, barely adolescent, issued a warning. Vocalization that translated to a phrase no Carnathi cub should ever direct at their parent, leave our alpha. Final warning, Gronix retreated his face a mask of shock. They threatened me. My own offspring. Threatened combat to protect a human. They met this morning, not mourning Lily. Called out, apparently unbothered by being defended from a decorated war. Veteran, lunch break like 5 hours ago. Maybe 6, the biologist's report came through on Nixva's display, each line more alarming than the last. Bonding. Hormone levels 340% above baseline. Neural pathway restructuring advanced. Stage, stress indicators when separated from human by more than 3M critical. Threshold, recommended intervention. None, Bond 2 advanced to safely. Disrupt, sir, High Command is responding to your postponement request. Jackson's voice was tight, the response filled the screen in brutal clarity. Mission proceeds as scheduled, enemy fleet. Positioning allows no delay. Cows 9. Intelligence critical to sector defense. Resolve contractor issue or select. Alternate operative. Time constraint, 1 hour 52 minutes. Select alternate, Nix's laugh held no humor. We selected Lily because humans survive conditions that liquefy our best. Soldiers, there is no alternate, sir. Perhaps if contractor Lily explained the stakes to them, you think I haven't tried that. Lily's voice carried from the room, exasperated and amused in equal measure. I've told them 6 times. I have to go on a mission. They understand every word. Watch. She addressed the cubs directly, her tone shifting to careful clarity. Guys, I need to go do something dangerous alone. It's my job. You have to stay here with your parents. The cubs' response was immediate and unified. They pressed closer, their bodies forming an impenetrable barrier around her legs. The smallest one made a sound that roughly translated to, no, stay safe. Here, see, Lily gestured helplessly. At the observation window, they get it. They just don't care. They're refusing a direct explanation of necessity. Vilks was frantically taking notes. That level of override suggests bonding depth that should take decades of pack integration. How did you establish alpha status? I didn't establish anything. Lily scratched behind one cub's neck ridge, and the creature practically melted with contentment. They were in the rec zone, looking bored and kind of lonely. Their supervisors were doing paperwork, so I sat down, shared my sandwich, and asked about their training. They told me about their day. We hung out for like 40 minutes, then I went back to work and they followed me. The command center fell silent. You played with them. Nixva's voice was barely a whisper. Well, yeah, someone needed to pay attention to them, and that created a pack alpha bond that's stronger than their connection to their biological parents. Apparently, Lily shrugged. Look, I'm not trying to cause problems. I told them I'd be back after the mission. They don't believe me. Largest cub, offspring of 2 elite Special Forces operatives, looked directly at the observation window with eyes that held far too much understanding. Then it did something that made every Carnathi in the room freeze. It moved to Lily's front, positioned itself in a textbook defensive stance, and issued a command. Vocalization to its siblings. The other 11 cubs instantly shifted formation. creating a pattern Nyxva recognized from. Advanced tactical training, layered. Protection with overlapping fields of fire and no blind spots, by the void. Growlnix whispered, "That's the Delta 9. Formation, we haven't even taught them that yet, they learned it from watching us train." Commander Kix's claws were trembling. They're executing special forces protocols to defend her. They've never responded to a single command we've given, but they'll use our techniques to protect a human they met. At lunch, Nyxva checked the chronometer. 1 hour 38 minutes until mission launch. And 12 cubs who had just demonstrated they were willing to fight the entire military command structure to keep their chosen alpha safe. Dr. Zinval arrived via emergency transport, her reputation preceding her, the galaxy's foremost expert on Karanathi neural bonding, author of 6 definitive texts, consultant to 3 planetary governments. She spent 20 minutes reviewing the biological data, then another 10 observing the cubs through the security feed. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of a collapsing paradigm. "This violates every principle I've spent 40 years establishing." She pulled up holographic displays showing Karnathi bonding sequences. "Look, standard pack. Integration requires dominance. Assertion, physical combat trials. Hierarchical positioning through strength displays and sustained proximity over minimum 3 years. Your human contractor has been with these cubs for 6 hours, 6.5 now." Jexna corrected quietly, "Even worse." Zinval gestured at Lily through the window. "She's smaller than them, weaker. No natural weapons, no threat display capability. By every metric they should view her as either prey or irrelevant background presence. Instead, they've imprinted on her as ultimate pack authority. This shouldn't be possible. This can't be possible, Doctor. We need solutions, not impossibilities." Nyxva's frustration was reaching critical levels. The mission clock showed 1 hour 9 minutes. "Walk me through exactly what happened." Zinval activated her recording device. "Contractor, can you hear me?" "Yeah, hi." Lily waved from inside the room, apparently unconcerned that 12 predators were using her as a living fortress. "You want to know what I did in precise detail, please?" I sat down on the rec zone floor. The cubs were kind of scattered around, looking restless. Their supervisors were busy with something, not really watching them, so I pulled out my lunch. Had this sandwich, some fruit, crackers, and one of the little ones came over. I offered them a piece of sandwich. They took it, then we just talked. Zinval's expression suggested she was hearing someone describe breathing underwater. "Talked about what?" "Their day mostly. They were telling me about training. Exercises. Sounded really boring. Honestly, lots of standing still and following commands." I asked if they liked it. They said no, so I asked what they did like. Turned out they like puzzles, games, exploring, normal kid stuff. Lily scratched behind another Cub's Ridge. We played this game where I'd hide my tools and they'd find them. Using scent tracking, they loved it. Then my break ended, so I said goodbye and headed back to my station. They followed, been together since. Silence in the command center was absolute. "You performed 0 dominance displays." Zinval's voice climbed. "No hierarchy establishment, no strength trials, no combat positioning. Why would I do any of that? They're kids. They're apex predators whose species requires." Zinval stopped, staring at her own Research notes like they'd betrayed her. You just played with them, shared food. Listened, well yeah, they seemed. Lonely, Lieutenant Gronix made a sound. Somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Doctor requests permission to add. Context, granted our offspring have been in aggression training for 8 months, standard Karanathi youth. Protocol, dominance exercises, combat. Drills, hierarchy, reinforcement. He paused, clearly struggling. They've been failing, refusing commands. Showing stress markers, we thought they were defective, unsuited for military lineage. Commander Kixa continued, her voice rough. We consulted specialists. Increased training intensity, nothing worked. They wouldn't bond with us properly, wouldn't respond to pack structure, wouldn't establish position in hierarchy. Then this human sits with them for 40 minutes and suddenly they're executing advanced tactical formations. To protect her, doctor review their current psychological status. Nixva pulled up the medical scans. Tell me what you see. Zinval's eyes widened as she read. Stress hormones minimal. Confidence markers exceptional. Social bonding indicators optimal. Neural development accelerated beyond normal range. There she looked up, stunned. They're thriving. This is the healthiest psychological profile I've ever seen in Karnathi cubs, because she treated them like children instead of soldiers, Jaxa said quietly. She gave them what they needed, not what we thought they should want. Nixva's communicator buzzed with another priority override. High command. His superior officer's face filled the screen, rigid with impatience. Commander, we're detecting increased enemy fleet activity. Mission launch must proceed in 51 minutes. Sedate the contractor, remove her from the cubs by force if necessary, and get her to the insertion bay. That's an order, sir. Forced removal will kill the cubs. Bonding is too advanced, then we lose 12 cubs. We cannot lose an entire sector to enemy occupation because a maintenance technician played with some animals. Execute the order, Commander. The connection terminated. Nixva looked at his assembled staff, at the experts who'd run out of explanations, at the parents who just watched a human succeed where they'd failed. Recommendations. Sir, if we attempt forced extraction, the cubs will fight. Nix military. Bering couldn't hide his anguish. They're juveniles, but 12 Karnathi in coordinated defensive formation could kill 30 personnel before we subdued them, and then they'd die anyway from the bonding shock. Zinval added, High Command is asking you to choose between mission success and 12 lives. Nixva pulled up the security feed one more time. Lily was showing the cubs something on her diagnostic pad, pointing at circuits and explaining connections. They watched with absolute focus, occasionally asking questions in their chittering language, which she somehow seemed to understand despite having no translation device. The mission clock showed 48 minutes. There's a third option, Lily called out, apparently having heard every word through the observation windows. Intercom, but you're really not going to like it. Every head in the command center turned toward her. The cubs. Come with me. The suggestion hit like a detonation charge. Nixa opened his mouth to refuse, to explain the dozen reasons why that was impossible, why the mission parameters prohibited it, why untrained cubs on a high mortality reconnaissance run was insanity itself. Then he looked at the cubs arranged in perfect tactical formation around a human who'd done nothing but be kind to them. And he realized that every system they'd built, every protocol they'd established, every principle they'd relied on had already failed. Maybe it was time to try something impossible. Absolutely not. Nixva's refusal was instant, automatic. The mission is solo insertion, high mortality parameters, designed for a single operative with specific environmental tolerances. Cubs are untrained, undisciplined, and are the offspring of your best special forces operatives. Lily interrupted, standing up with 12 shadows moving in perfect sync around her, and they've been watching tactical training their entire lives, haven't you? She looked down at the cubs. The largest one chittered something that made Lily grin. They say they know 38 tactical formations, 63 hand signals, and the complete infiltration protocols for hostile territory. Lily's expression turned serious. They've been learning by observation. Since they could walk, you just never asked if they understood. Understanding and executing are entirely different. Nixva started. Lily made a subtle hand gesture. Reconnaissance. Spread pattern level 2. The cubs exploded into motion. Within seconds, they'd positioned themselves in a textbook dispersal formation. Overlapping sight lines, staggered depth positioning, optimal spacing for rapid response. Each cub held their position with absolute stillness, eyes scanning different vectors, bodies aligned for instant movement in any direction. Clears throat by the void. Growlnix whispered, that's perfect execution. And GT snorts. And GT, we've drilled that pattern for months. And they never. Lily shifted to another signal. Tactical advance, low profile. The cubs moved like liquid shadow, maintaining formation while dropping into hunting postures that made them nearly invisible against the floor. They flowed forward in synchronized pulses, each movement precise, professional, deadly. Zinval was frantically recording everything. They knew the commands all along. They simply refused to respond because they hadn't bonded with the trainers. They were waiting for someone they trusted to lead them. Demo's over. Guys, Lily made a casual gesture that wasn't in any military manual. Something soft and welcoming. The cubs immediately broke formation and clustered around her, suddenly looking like children again instead of elite tactical units. Good job, you've been paying attention. Commander Kixna stepped forward, her voice shaking. May I try? Lily looked at the cubs, who looked back at her with clear expectation. What do you think? Should we let your parents join the practice? The largest cub chittered something. Lily nodded. They say yes, but only because I asked them to. She met Kix's eyes. They'll listen to you now, but they need to know you're listening to them too. Kixa entered the room slowly, reverently. She made the hand signal for basic attention. Stance a command her offspring had ignored hundreds of times. Every cub snapped to attention instantly. Perfectly. Their mother's breath caught. Offspring tactical assessment. What do you observe about this room's defensive positions? The second largest cub responded in rapid chittering, pointing out sight lines, cover positions, entry, vulnerability points, and 3 escape routes. Nixva hadn't even noticed. The analysis was thorough, professional, and entirely correct. They weren't defective, Growlnix said, his voice thick with emotion. They were waiting for someone who treated them like people instead of weapons. Nixva's mind raced through impossible calculations. The Mission clock showed 39 minutes. Enemy. Fleet positioning, sector defense. Requirements. And now suddenly an option that shouldn't exist. Dr. Zinval theoretical. Assessment. 12 Karate Cubs in perfect tactical coordination, led by a human. They're bonded to protect on a reconnaissance mission designed for infiltration, viability. Zinvo pulled up tactical projections, her claws flying across the interface. Cubs that age have superior sensory capabilities compared to adults, sharper hearing, better night vision, enhanced scent tracking, smaller profile means better concealment, natural pack coordination. She looked up, eyes wide. Sir, if they're actually this well trained, they'd be better suited for reconnaissance than a solo operative. Multiple observation points, coordinated threat response, redundant intelligence gathering. They have no combat experience, Jacksna pointed out. Neither does Lily, Gronix countered. She's a maintenance technician, but the mission needs someone who can survive environmental extremes and improvise under pressure. That's human specialty. For everything else, he looked at the Cubs executing another flawless formation pattern. My offspring have been bred and trained for exactly this kind of operation. They just needed the right leader. Nixva pulled up the mission parameters already running. Modifications. Solo insertion became pack infiltration. Single point reconnaissance became distributed surveillance network. High mortality risk for one operative became calculated risk distribution across 13 coordinated units. This is insane, he muttered, but his claws were already approving the redesign. Sir, request permission to join as backup support. Kicks in his voice was steady. My offspring will respond to parental commands now if the primary unit encounters trouble. Granted. Full Special Forces support team positioned at extraction coordinates. Nixva couldn't believe he was authorizing this. Lily, you're now commanding a tactical reconnaissance pack of 12 juveniles on a mission that has a he recalculated based on the new formation 38% mortality projection. Better than the original number, Lily said cheerfully. She looked at the Cubs. You guys ready to do something really cool and also really dangerous? The Cubs' responding chorus of chittering translated roughly to enthusiastic affirmation mixed with obviously where else would we be? Mission launch in 33 minutes. Get them equipped, briefed, and to the insertion bay. Nixva watched as Gronix and Kixna moved to their offspring with tears in their eyes, finally able to connect with children who'd been there all along. And someone get contractor Lily actual tactical gear. She's commanding a special forces unit now. I'm still a maintenance technician, Lily called as guards escorted her toward the equipment bay. Cubs flowing around her like a living shield. I'm just doing maintenance on your mission parameters, Jacksna laughed. Despite the tension, sir, this is either brilliant or the worst tactical decision in military history. Right now it's the only option we have. Nixva pulled up the enemy fleet positions, the mission clock, the unprecedented formation of 1 human and 12 predators who decided she was worth following into death itself. And somehow, I think the enemy is going to be very surprised. The Cubs had learned their tactical training from watching. They'd learned trust from 40 minutes of kindness. Now the galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone combined both. The mission report took 3 hours to compile and 6 Minutes for every military strategist in the sector to declare impossible. 12 cubs and 1 human maintenance technician had infiltrated enemy territory, gathered intelligence on fleet positions, identified 3 hidden weapons installations, and exfiltrated. Without a single casualty, the cubs' sensory coordination had been flawless. Their tactical execution had exceeded veteran special forces standards, and Lily's leadership had consisted primarily of phrases like, "Okay guys, let's check over there, and who wants to investigate that weird structure?" Commander Nixva watched the mission recordings for the 5th time, trying to identify the moment when military doctrine had become irrelevant. "She's not giving commands," Jaxo observed. Leaning over his shoulder, "She's making suggestions and they're responding like each suggestion is the most important order they've ever received because she trusts them to make decisions." Dr. Zinville had been analyzing the footage. Obsessively, she treats them as intelligent individuals, not weapons to deploy. That's not how we train. That's how we're training now. Nixva pulled up the new protocols he'd been drafting since the mission's success. Human pack integration method effective immediately for all Karnathi youth development programs. The response had been instantaneous. Within days, elite special forces families were submitting requests for human contractors, not soldiers, not trainers, maintenance staff, engineers, administrative personnel, humans who treat their cubs like cubs instead of tactical assets. The station's central maintenance bay had become the unlikely heart of a military revolution. Lily was back at her regular job, calibrating power conduits and replacing worn circuits. Except now she had 12 assistants who carried tools in their mouths, organized supplies by size and function, and occasionally asked very astute questions about electrical theory. "No, buddy. That's a live wire. Wait, you knew that, didn't you?" Lily gently redirected the smallest cub away from a panel. "You're testing me? Okay, yes, good safety awareness." The cub chittered proudly. "Contractor Lily." Nixva approached with another human in tow, a nervously-looking individual from engineering named Dmitri. "This is the contractor who will be working with the second group of cubs starting next cycle. I thought you might provide orientation." "Oh sure." Lily wiped grease off her hands. "It's pretty simple actually. Just be nice to them, play games, listen. When they talk, share your lunch. Treat them like people." Dmitri blinked. That's the entire protocol." "I mean, yeah, they're kids." Lily scratched behind one cub's ridge, producing a sound like a purring chainsaw. "They've got feelings, interests, personalities. Just pay attention to who they are instead of what you want them to be." The military has spent centuries developing training methodologies. Nixva started, and I played with them during lunch break. Lily's grin was entirely too satisfied. "Look, I'm not saying your methods are wrong. I'm saying maybe ask the cubs what they actually need." Behind them, the 12 cubs had arranged themselves into a sleeping pile around Lily's primary workstation, a tangle of limbs and tails and contentment that would have been impossible 8 days ago. "They're not leaving her side," Jaxna noted, appearing with status reports. "Medical confirms the bond is permanent. Cubs are now officially assigned to maintenance section under contractor Lily's supervision." "Speaking of which," Lily said, completely unbothered by having become an accidental military Commander, can they have extra rations? They worked really hard today and I promised them treats if they finished. Organizing the spare parts inventory. Nixva stared at her. You're negotiating for them like they're your children. Well, they kind of are now. Aren't they? Lily's expression suggested. This was obvious. They need someone looking out for them, making sure they're happy, healthy, learning stuff. That's basically parenting. That's basically revolutionizing our entire approach to youth development, Zinval muttered, still taking notes. Extra rations approved, Nixa said, because what else could he say? The human had accidentally created the most effective tactical unit in recent military history by sharing her sandwich and asking about their day. Dmitri was still processing, so I just talked to them, play with them, and actually care about their answers, Lily added. That's the important part. As Nixva walked away, he heard Lily explaining the finer points of hide-and-seek to Dmitri while the cubs chittered suggestions about the best hiding spots on the station behind him. Military protocols were being rewritten. Special Forces training was being redesigned, and the galaxy's understanding of pack bonding was being fundamentally reconstructed. All because one human had decided that lonely cubs needed someone to pay attention to them. The cosmic implications were staggering. The human explanation was impossibly simple. Someone needed to play with them. Nixva filed his reports, approved the treaty. Requests from 3 governments wanting to study human child rearing methods and authorized construction of new recreational facilities designed around actually letting cubs be cubs. In the maintenance bay, 12 elite predators slept in a pile around a human who'd never intended to revolutionize anything. She'd just been nice. Apparently, that was enough to change